water supplies failed. The main control centre was bombed out and all phone lines went dead, leaving messengers on push bikes as the only means of coordinating operations. At Nunthorpe Grove, Edna Blakeborough sheltered at a neighbour's house.
We were all sat there, except Dorothy. Now, she was the ATS girl. Anyway, she said, "Come upstairs, Edna, don't be so frightened, and see York's burning." And I didn't move. And it was then that we saw was blackout move, and the light was swinging. The middle of just swinging like that. That was when the explosive must have gone off, the bomb must have gone off, because I don't remember any more.
The house received a direct hit from a high explosive bomb. Edna and her neighbours were buried under the rubble. Above them, 253 Squadron's night fighters were homing in on their target.
You would creep up behind them. If you could just get underneath them and then come up just slightly below them so they didn't see you, and go as close as you dare and then open up. I always tried to hit the gunner first and then come up closer, but you know, you don't know.
Lieutenant Merlin's crew had completed their mission and were heading for home.
While I was still climbing, there was a loud noise in the cabin. I knew immediately that a night fighter was shooting at us. I was angry with my comrades. They had not seen the fighter. It must have come from behind. I felt angry, which was not really the best reaction when we were fighting for our lives.
He was forced to make an emergency landing.
I saw the nose going through the field. We slid through the earth for about 500 metres, taking bushes and branches with us. I was ploughing a real English field. Everything was burning. I threw myself out of the plane and dropped to the ground. My nerves were shot to pieces, but I was determined to survive. I ran from the plane. Behind me, the ammunition on the plane was exploding. I didn't know if my own plane was going to shoot me dead.
Die Nerven waren enorm angespannt. Und der Funker.
The radio operator had been sitting next to the fuel tanks. He'd been sprayed with fuel and he was burning. I went to him and put my arms around him to put out the flames. His leather helmet had shrunk onto his head. I ripped it off and then saw his belt, which was glowing. I got it off, but it was so hot it burnt my hands. I led him away, but his upper body was completely black. He knew he was going to die from these burns.
Buried under the rubble of Nunthorpe Grove, Edna Blakeborough regained consciousness.
I really didn't know that I was buried. And I didn't know that Anne was with me. But I heard this voice say to me, "For God's sake, don't move. You'll go to the bottom of the crater." Well, I couldn't have moved, I don't think. And they formed a human chain, they told me, that seen my little daughter's hand sticking out. We may never have been found. And he said, "There's a child's hand there." And we were pulled out of the rubble halfway down that crater.
Edna's ATS friend Dorothy was not so fortunate.
She was found among water. The water had got in, and she was covered, they told me afterwards, she was covered in mud and water. But the soldiers came and they dug for 10 days until they found her.
In just 90 minutes, the Luftwaffe had done its work. The city's ancient guild hall was ablaze. Large sections of the station were destroyed. The 10:15 express from King's Cross to Edinburgh, loaded with passengers, was hit. William Milner helped the injured into the shelters as the bombs rained down.
He went back into a building where he worked for his first aid box, and an incendiary bomb fell on the building and it caught fire and he was trapped then. When his body was found, they said he had the first aid box underneath him. He'd managed to reach it but didn't get out.
With one of his crew dead and the others badly injured, Lieutenant Carl Merlin went for help and encountered a jumpy home guard.
Hörte ich dann ein aufgeregtes Geschrei, hands up, hands up.
I heard shouting, hands up, hands up. I put my hands up even though I didn't want to, but I realised they were very agitated. I told them I had no weapons and they checked me over and led me to a Nissen hut. They were very friendly and we chatted. It was the first time in my life that I talked to English people. They were very polite and reasonable, totally normal. There were no expressions of hatred at all. There must have been people there who hated me even though they didn't know me, because I was German. But I didn't feel hatred for anyone either.
Keine Hassgefühle oder kein Hassausdruck.
The following day, questions began to be asked in York. The air raid sirens had sounded a full 10 minutes after the raid began. Why had the radar not spotted the approaching bombers earlier and given York's people a chance to take shelter?
They'd actually fly up the North Sea and then turn. And even then, and this is one of the problems with York, all that you know is they're heading over the coast in your general direction. By 1942, it had been realised that you wasted an awful lot of time if you did the air raid siren in the whole area in which the Germans might be attacking, and therefore you didn't turn the sirens on for anywhere, particularly in the northeast, almost until the bombs started to fall.
The attacks on Britain's cathedral cities became known as the Baedeker Raids after the famous German tourist guidebooks. Legend has it, Hitler ordered the destruction of every historic town which rated 3 stars or more. The pattern, though, was picked up too late, and a series of errors meant the York bombers weren't spotted until they crossed the coast.
The British had also learnt how to intercept the German radio beams which fastened over targets. But even in this, they got it wrong for the Baedeker raids. The Germans were now using an extra ultrasonic level, and the British listening machines were not calibrated to pick these up.
York, though, was much more of a military target than many realised. The famous Rowntree's chocolate factory was making munitions. Over 900 workers laboured day and night to produce fuses and landmines. Thousands of troops on the move passed through York Station, also a crucial junction in the transport of supplies out to Hull, and from there on to the Eastern Front.
It's an extremely important railway, and York was an important point on that railway because there are so many railway lines coming together. In the Second World War, there was also a big engine shed here which provided the steam locomotives for all of these trains, and that would have been a legitimate target as well. So there's no doubt in my mind that in terms of the rules of engagement during the Second World War, York was a target as far as the railway was concerned.
These reconnaissance reports, found and translated after the war, show just how much the Germans knew about York. They give detailed instructions on how to find and attack the station from the air and what sort of defences to expect. The Germans had no use for them, though, until in February 1942, Sir Arthur Bomber Harris was brought in to head up Britain's Bomber Command, an appointment that would have a direct impact on York. Harris wanted to strike at the heart of the German war machine.
There are a lot of people who say that bombing can never win a war. Well, my answer to that is that it has never been tried yet, and we shall see.
Heslington Hall on the outskirts of York was the headquarters of 4 Group Bomber Command and would play a vital role in this new emphasis on bombing attacks.
There is a sense that the only way the British could strike back at Hitler at the time was by bombing Germany, and that there was nothing else that they were really capable of doing at the time. It would be a number of years before they were able to invade Germany, invade France, and the Russians were desperately asking us to make a major contribution to the war.
Britain was in a desperate fighting situation in 1942. Having been pushed out of Europe, it was only in North Africa that it was engaging the Germans.